Welcome to Financial Strategies with Andrew and Daniel Adjemi, powered by the Retirement Income Store and brought to you by Adjemi Financial Strategies in Guilford, Connecticut and Denver, Colorado.
Mabel came in to do a free second opinion on her RMDs, and when I looked at her accounts and what her existing broker was doing and financial guy, I found out she'd been doing it wrong. I said, Mabel, what's going on here? These are not right. You now owe a 50% penalty to the IRS on your RMDs because you didn't do it right.
50% on top of the taxes owed on those RMDs, right? That's the IRS's largest penalty.
And it's painful. And in Mabel's case, I said, Mabel, not only do you have this 20% penalty for 1 year, but you did not do it right for 2 years. That's twice. Oh, the tax ramifications are huge on this. I'm Andrew Adjemi.
And I'm Daniel Adjemi, and you're listening to Financial Strategies. Today, we're talking about RMDs and taxes on those RMDs, how people can save some money on taxes, strategies and tricks and secrets they may not know about to help them pay as little as they have to and maybe keep a little bit extra either for their vacations, their family, or to pass on to future generations or charities they care about.
Exactly. And this is, when we're talking about RMDs, it stands for Required Minimum Distribution. That's what has to happen when it's time to pay the piper, right? The government's been giving us this opportunity to put away monies in the 401ks, IRAs, 403bs for years and years and years. But when you get into your 70s, it's now time that you have to pay the piper, so to speak, and the government is due their taxes on that money. And the rules for that have changed in December of 2019. Prior to January of 2020, if you were 70 and a half years old, you had to start taking your RMDs. And it's a certain amount. It's about just a little under 4% at that age. And it increases. The percentage you have to take increases every year. Whether or not the dollar amount does, it depends what your investments are doing. But so on January 1st of 2020, it got changed to anybody who was born July 1st of 1949 or later has their RMDs are now at 72 years old, the year they turn 72. Somewhere between January 1st to December 31st, they have to take the minimum amount. They could wait an extra year, but we typically recommend doing it in that year. And with that, they have to take this amount out every year as long as they live.
So people have to take these required minimum distributions because they've never paid tax on the money in those accounts, right? So on a 403b, IRA, a 401k, these types of qualified accounts, they get a deduction when they put their money into the qualified account. So reduce the taxes they paid in that year. And this may be 30 years ago, 20 years ago, whatever, right? That they put money into these accounts. And now they're at that 71, 72 years old or older.
Right.
And IRS says, hey, you need to take money out of this account because we want you to pay taxes on those distributions. And so if you had $1 million in, say, an IRA, that first year is going to be about $40,000 you have to take out.
That's right. That's right. And you have to pay the tax on it because you haven't paid tax, and now it's time to pay tax. The government wants their tax. And, one of the things that I want to say in regard to these rules for this is that previously, when they changed it from 70 and a half to 72 years old, people think, oh, they gave us 2 years. Well, not really. It was a year and a half. It wasn't that long. And but they also took something away. They never give us something without taking something away. Prior to that point, if we died, the money could continue for our heirs until their death. But now it has to be all withdrawn within 10 years. So the government is wanting all the taxes on that money within 10 years of our death from that standpoint. So this means the government's going to be getting a lot more money and we're going to be able to pass on a lot less money because more of it is going to be going away in taxes, which is totally egregious, right?
Yeah. So how do people calculate these things? I know our guy over here, Michael's been working hard trying to get all of our clients, make sure their IRAs, 401ks are squared away, right?
Right.
So you can add up all your IRAs and you can pool those. So if you have three IRAs, you could say the RMD on that one's 20, the RMD on that one's 10, the RMD on that one is 35. Add all those together and take them out of one account if you'd like to. But you have to calculate 401ks, 403bs, and IRAs separately, and then take them out of the different type of accounts. So if you rolled over your 401k, your IRA, or your 401k to an IRA, your 403b to an IRA, then you have one RMD compared to if you have an old 401k, an old 403b, and an IRA, you have to take three separate RMDs.
Exactly. And the reason for that is because the 401k is owned by the company, your old company, not by you. The 403b is owned by your own company, not by you. It's your money in there. You have an account in that, but it's owned by them. So that's why you have to take each one from there. But the IRA stands for individual retirement arrangement. So it's owned by you and it's your money. So that's why you can pool that money. And I think, Daniel, this would be great to offer to people in our listening audience, Understanding Required Minimum Distributions paper that we have for them. And, if you're listening and you like that, you listen to Financial Strategies with Andrew and Daniel Adjemi. And today's, we're talking about RMDs and taxation on RMDs. And Understanding Required Minimum Distributions is for you that we'd like to put in your hands if you like. 800-725-7616 for your free copy of Understanding RMDs. Daniel, when we're talking about this, it's huge what happens with the taxation. If we don't do the RMDs properly, that's where this 50% penalty that we spoke about at the top of the show comes into play. And that's a 50% penalty that is, if your RMD is $40,000, well, the penalty is $20,000 in that example, but you're paying taxes on the whole $40,000. So you'd end up with, if the taxes are $10,000 in that case, you end up with $10,000 in your pocket because you gave the IRS in that example $30,000. So it's very important that people get this right. And it's not rocket science, but it's detail oriented. And I hope that we're able to get across to the people in our listening audience how important it is to take care of the details on this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the biggest things to watch out for is to make sure you get those proper amounts out of the proper accounts. Watch out for those firewalls that keep you having to take separate RMDs, because a lot of people do have small 403bs or 401ks or things like that they have with different companies that they just never got around to rolling over. And it's one thing to pay taxes on money you owe it. It's another thing to pay penalties because you just, weren't paying attention. You were enjoying life. You don't want to have to pay penalties just because you're enjoying life and you're not, you don't do this every day. You're not watching your accounts every minute of every day, and you got busy.
Right. I can't tell you how many people that I've talked to that think, I'll take, I've got this money in my 401k and I'll take that as part of my RMD should something happen or whatever. And I have to give them the bad news that no, you can't do that. You can take the RMD out of your 401k, but you're not going to be able to use more than that you can take more than that, but it's not going to count toward your RMD on your IRA. So that's huge. And then another thing that's huge is beneficiary IRAs. So, we have a lot of clients who maybe their parents died, their brothers died, sisters died, and they inherit IRA. Now, when that happens, you have to take the required minimum distribution out of that. And so that's another thing. So this is a great time of year to be talking about this, because if you have not taken your RMDs, whether from a beneficiary IRA that you've inherited or from if you're turned 72 years old this year, you're going to have to start taking it. And this is the time to look at it and make sure that you get it done and that you withhold penalties and that you start looking at how to save as much money as you can. And if you're not yet to that point, hey, that's good too, because you can prepare. The good news is you can prepare for when you're 72 and get ready for that in advance, which is a key thing to do.
Yeah, definitely. And that's what we want to go over today. We want to go over some of those tricks to help people learn how they can prepare to be in a better place for that, because there's Roth IRAs, right? And Roth IRAs are pretty neat because you don't have to take required minimum distributions. And so that is something that people can look into or be happy about if you have these Roth IRAs, because you've already paid the taxes. So nothing has to come out. When the money comes out, you're not paying taxes on it. So the IRS doesn't care if you take money out of those accounts, unless it's in a 401k plan, then it gets a little bit tricky. But if you just have a regular Roth IRA, you already pay taxes on that. So you can be happy. You don't have to take RMDs and you don't have to pay taxes on that money.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a huge thing. We're going to be talking about different things when we come back from break here. We're going to start talking about the variety of tricks and ideas where you can either save taxes, prepare for your RMDs coming up, or even if you are having to take RMDs, things that you can prepare for taxes in the future and lower your taxes, because who wants to pay more than their fair share of taxes? I mean, I think there are some people out there like that, but most people don't want to pay their fair share, want to pay only their fair share, not anything more. So we have for you and our listening audience, before we go to break here, we'd like to give you a book. It's called Tax Invisible. It's a very short, easy read book. It's only about 80 pages or so from that standpoint, and talks about it's not so much RMDs, but just how you can invest money and have it be tax-free when you need to take it out. And that's always a great thing to be able to have. You can have that by calling 800-725-7616. Our gift for listening to Financial Strategies, then your Daniel Adjemi. Tax Invisible. Get it now. 800-725-7616. We'll be right back after this.
I'm David Scranton, founder of the Retirement Income Store. If you're in or near retirement, are you certain you have the right retirement plan in place? Do you want to help ensure your nest egg will last you all throughout retirement? Take our retirement review quiz and find out in 5 minutes or less if you're doing everything you can to achieve a more successful retirement.
Visit us online at Adjemi.com. That's AGEMY.com. Welcome back to Financial Strategies with Andrew Adjemi in Connecticut and Daniel Adjemi in Colorado.
Dad, I don't know if you remember back quite a few years ago now, one of our favorite clients, they're all favorites, but one of our favorite clients, he had a beneficiary IRA and the company set it up wrong, and they didn't set it up as a beneficiary IRA. And 4.5 years later, we saw it was never set up as a beneficiary IRA. And this was a conundrum because this person wasn't old enough to take RMDs, but you have to take RMDs on beneficiary IRAs no matter how old you are.
Right.
And we were able to help him solve that problem by actually cashing the entire thing out, because you had 5 years to take it all, or you have to take your RMDs. But it cost a lot of money to fix that problem in taxes. And that's why people really want to watch out for managing these beneficiary IRAs, especially. I'm Daniel Adjemi.
And I'm Andrew Adjemi, and you're listening to Financial Strategies. Andrew and Daniel Adjemi. Today's topic is taxation on RMDs. RMD stands for Required Minimum Distribution. And if you inherit an IRA, as Daniel was just speaking about, you have to take a minimum distribution on that, even if you're below 72 years old. So it's important to make sure the details are right across the board. That's, I think, your example, right, Daniel? That's what you're trying to bring across, is that the details matter. And that we need to make that those things have to happen, and we need to make sure that it's done in a proper way. But more importantly is to reduce the taxation and pay as little to the government as you have to, right?
Right. Well, if you took that RMD, right? If you took an RMD out every year for 5 years, this particular person was earning decent money, right, would have added a small amount to their annual income compared to taking half of or cashing out the entire thing basically cost half of the account because of the tax bracket. And so those little tiny things, a company making that little mistake by just not naming the thing properly, which then no RMDs were taking, cost serious taxes. And so absolutely, we want to go over some of these things so people can know the questions to ask, know the things to look out for to make sure they're in the best situation and pay the little or the least amount of taxes that they have to pay.
Exactly. And, first thing I think we'll start with is to let you and our listening audience know, if you're still working and have a 401k and you're 72 years old, you do not have to take your RMD from that 401k as long as you're still working for the same company. Now, if you have a 401k from a different company, another story. Okay, all bets are off. But if you're the company that you're working at, you don't have to take RMDs from that 401k. So that's one thing that sometimes people are not clear on. But let's get into talking about, Daniel. Don't you think this is appropriate to get into how to manage withdrawals, make sure that they're taken properly and such?
Well, if you're worried about your RMDs, right? Let's just wrap up that 401k one. If you're worried about those and you have other money, like maybe you have an inheritance or things like that, and you have a large RMD, you could put off retiring for an extra year, so you don't have to take that RMD if you're older than that 72 years old. Now, one thing you have to be careful of is if you're the owner of that company, you still have to take your required minimum distribution from the 401k. But as long as you're an employee, you're not an owner of the company, then you can put that off and you can manage those taxes by working an extra year, extra 2 years. We've seen a lot of people do that because they either have, maybe their spouse got a ton of money coming in that was taxable. They had a really good year, right? A business year, or things like that. And so that is a way that you could potentially save tremendous money on taxes. And then the next year when you retire, you're in a lower tax bracket and the RMD doesn't hurt you as much.
Yeah, that's very key. And two, with the RMD, you can take it in the year that you're 72 years old, or you can push it off and take in the first quarter to second year, but you'd have to take two in that second year. And so there's different things when you're taking withdrawals to look at that. I mean, we've seen people who have had too much income to where it was in their better interest to take two in 1 year than it was to take it at the initial 72 years old. So there's a lot of things to take into consideration. So if you're still working, that can actually work to your benefit if handled properly. But again, as Daniel said, it's not for owners of companies, it's for employees of companies. Good. That's great, Daniel. So when, with the other withdrawals, sometimes people get involved, and that's a great aspect, is that sometimes in that situation, it's better to take in your first year, to wait until the year you're 73 and take the RMD for when you're 72 before April 1st of that year. And then you can take also your RMD for when you're 73 years old sometime during that year as well. That works for some people. But in the other way, sometimes people need like $100,000 and their RMD is $50,000 a year. And instead of taking it all out of their IRA in 1 year, if it's in December, we can take $50,000 in December as their RMD, and then $50,000 in January as their RMD, and then they can get their $100,000 over a period of time. And that may keep them out of pushing them into another tax bracket if they took it all in 1 year, as well as satisfying the RMD on 2 separate years without, and so you're having to take less money from that angle.
Yeah, the managing withdrawal ones is one of the most important things, I think, because a lot of times people just want money, right? So they're buying a house or they're paying for their kids' tuition. We get people call in all the time for these kinds of things, and they just want the money. And because it's an emotional thing and there's stuff going on and they're busy, they're not necessarily thinking about the best tax efficient way to do it. So if you already had a $20,000 distribution earlier in the year, and now you're like, well, I need to take this. I just need the money. managing those withdrawals is so big because maybe it's taking another 10 from the IRA that just did your $30,000 RMD, and now it's taking the other 20 out of another account that you won't be taxed on. But it depends on your tax bracket, because it might be advantageous to take it out of the IRA if you're in a really low tax bracket this year. So seeing that full picture throughout the year, not just most people look at the tax plan at the end of the year or when they're filing their taxes when it's too late, right? But looking at this as you're going through the year to make sure you're on track. This is tremendous, looking at which accounts you're taking it from, and how much you've taken from qualified accounts already in that year before you make those purchases.
Yeah. Good point, Daniel. Tax planning is a very important thing to be doing. People spend a lot of money in taxes that they don't need to if they just took a little time to do some planning. And typically, when people don't think about taxes until tax season, which is it's too late to do any tax planning for the previous year. So we're finishing out 2021. This is a great time to look at the taxes for 2021, what they're looking like, to be able to prepare. Because once January 1st of 2022 comes, it's too late to do any tax planning. All you can do is damage control. And like you said, Daniel, that's a very good point that you brought up. Depending what people's tax brackets are, we have clients that are in low tax brackets, and we bring them up to the point to where they take out money out of their IRAs tax-free up to that certain point, or at least at a very low rate. So whether or not that's you, it's dependent upon your situation. But one thing that we do know that's happening, your 2025 taxes are going to be increasing. The 12% bracket is going to 15. The 22 bracket is going to go to the 25, and 24 bracket is going to 28, so forth, so on. And then if you're married, when one of you passes away, you're going to go into a higher tax bracket because you're going to go from married filing jointly to a single. And that's without anything else that President Biden or anybody else along the way may do regarding the taxes, just with the tax bracket. So very important to be able to look at that. And, from that standpoint, understanding RMDs is key. And we would like to put in your hand a paper that we have. It's called Understanding Required Minimum Distributions. You can have that by calling 800-725-7616, 800-725-7616. Daniel, there's some other aspects behind managing withdrawals that we need to take into consideration. I mean, there's IRMA taxes, there's Social Security provisions that we need to make sure allocations are done properly. So a lot of different aspects behind there, but with withdrawals. And we're fast approaching needing to take a break at this point. But what do you want to delve into before our break?
Well, a lot of times, you hear this thing about the 4% rule. And basically that is, if you take 4% out of your accounts a year, you won't run out of money. And that's been changing. We did a show the other day, Tina is a Liar, which is basically there is no alternative because bonds especially are paying so little, government bonds, right? And so being able to generate the income that you need, right? Being able to generate over that 4% income so that you can cover these RMDs without having to sell down your principal is huge. Right. And that actually getting over that 4% and not depending on markets continuing to do what they're doing, right? Knowing that your assets, the securities in your account, the positions in your account are generating over a 4% interest can give you a lot of confidence so that you can cover these required minimum distributions. And then that allows you to make those decisions. If you need $100,000 and by taking that, it's going to cost you a ton of money in taxes. Well, maybe you're taking a home equity line from your house, right? You're taking a loan at 2 or 3%, and you're taking your RMD to pay that down, right? To pay that loan down each year with your dividends,
right?
Instead of taking the whole $100,000 out of your account, because if you take that 3% loan, and inflation right now is at 5%, you're actually getting paid 2% a year to take that. And then if your assets on the other side are generating 5%, right? You're ahead by 7%, not including the taxes you just saved by doing that. And that's
Sweet.
when we're talking about managing these RMDs, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, and that's huge. That's huge. I mean, who doesn't want to make 7% more? And that's a great thing. Thank you, Daniel. And if you just picked up, listening to us, you're listening to Financial Strategies with Andrew and Daniel Edgerby. Today's topic is taxation on RMDs, required minimum distributions. We have a book that we'd like to put in your hand called Tax Invisible, easy read, quick read book that we think you'd like to read, be able to use. This doesn't work for your IRAs and such. This maybe might work for the money that you take out of the IRA from the RMD, or maybe monies that you have that's in the bank or such like that. But Tax Invisible is something that allows people to be able to take money tax-free. If it's tax-free, it's for me. But have that by calling 800-725-7616. We'll be right back after this.
History tells us the market goes up and the market goes down. What would you do if you lost half of your retirement savings? It's time to make the shift to steady, reliable retirement income. And where do you go? The Retirement Income Store. Log on to agemy.com for your free retirement review. That's AGEMY.com. The Retirement Income Store, where retirees go for income.
Welcome back to Financial Strategies with Andrew Adjemi in Connecticut and Daniel Adjemi in Colorado.
Dad, one of the biggest reasons I hear people say, I don't want to do a Roth conversion because I don't want to pay the taxes. And they get freaked out when they see I'm taking $100,000 out of this account, moving it to my Roth, and it's going to cost me $20,000 to do it. But what people a lot of times forget while they're doing this is the growth that can get at a tax-free rate. And we had somebody do this recently, and she did not like the taxes that she had to pay. And then a few short years later, we were having a conversation, and the Roth had almost doubled. And she said, how did this happen? And I said, that's the magic of compounding interest, right? Right. And what happened was now she can collect income off of that account and never pay taxes, or she can just let it keep growing and never have to take an RMD out of it. I'm Daniel Adjemi.
And I'm Andrew Adjemi. You're listening to Financial Strategies with Andrew and Daniel Adjemi. Today's topic is taxation on RMDs. RMD stands for required minimum distribution, which you have to do at 72 years old now. And they're taking money out of your IRAs, 401ks, et cetera. Daniel, that's a great story. And I love that. I love being able to convert money from IRAs to Roth IRAs so that people can get tax-free money in the future. I love tax-free. If it's tax-free, it's for me, man. And when is $1,000 not $1,000? When you have to pay tax on that $1,000. But if it's $1,000 that's tax-free, it's a true $1,000. So that's a great thing. And, when we're talking about withdrawals, right, and taking money, required minimum distributions out, and that's where you're going with that, right? It is now converting IRA money to Roth IRA so that you don't have to have the RMDs on that Roth IRA, right?
Right. You could do this preemptively, so you could plan towards this well before your required minimum distribution age, and then your RMD will be smaller, or maybe you could get it down so you didn't even have one.
Right.
But the other thing is you can do this at RMD. You can't use your RMD to convert. Okay. So say you had $1 million and your RMD, the required amount you had to take out was $40,000. You couldn't convert that 40, but maybe you're in a bracket where, or maybe you just want to start converting. So you take your 40 and then you take another 40 and you convert that. So you can do additional money you can convert, and you can convert as much as you would like. You just have to pay the taxes on it. So there's a lot of times people get confused and think that there's like a $6,000 conversion limit. That's only contributions. You can convert as much as you'd like. So having a strategy to get your monies from qualified, from IRAs, from traditional IRAs into Roths is a really good way to reduce your RMDs in the future.
Exactly. And you can't get brought up a very good point, Daniel. And if you're in our listening audience, please pay attention to this from the standpoint of you can't convert your RMD, but you could use your RMD to pay the taxes on the conversion. So, if you had a $30,000 RMD and you wanted to convert $40,000, your taxes are going to be, generally speaking, $10,000, $15,000, depending upon your state taxes. And you could use that $30,000 of RMD to pay the taxes on that $40,000 conversion. But but that's a beautiful way to put you in the future. And like you said, Daniel, preemptive. So, I mean, we have 60-year-olds that are doing this, planning for when they're 72 years old by doing these things ahead of time so that they can get that knocked down and have either a smaller required minimum distribution. Because the terrible thing about having a big minimum distribution is if you don't need the money. I mean, if your minimum distribution is $40,000, $50,000 and you need the money, fine, that you're going to pay tax on it. But if you don't need that much money, then you're paying tax on money that you'd rather not pay tax on. So if you have the money in a Roth IRA, you're able to do more with it from that standpoint. The money's still available to you, but there's no taxation, no RMDs required from that standpoint. And
one thing a lot of people forget is you don't have to pay money on money that comes out of a Roth IRA. Okay.
Yeah.
So a lot of people think it's your principal. No, it's everything in it. So if you had, again, we'll use $1 million. You have $1 million in an IRA and it's generating you, let's say, $60,000 a year of income. So you're taking that $60,000 out because you want that to live, right?
Right.
Well, you're going to have to pay, depending on your tax brackets, 25, 30%. Just in federal, depending what state you're in, that could be even more, right? And so in a Roth, guess how much you get to keep? You get to keep all 60, all the 60 that you're generating. If you want that income, you get 60 in your pocket instead of the 40 or whatever it's going to be to get it out of the IRA. So getting that over does tremendous things for your lifestyle and your income. As well as reducing those RMDs and giving you much, much more flexibility how to spend your money the way you want it instead of the way that somebody tells you have to spend it.
Exactly. And another thing that, when you're taking your withdrawals from your RMDs, if you are a person that likes to give to charity, well, you can give that money directly from your IRA to the charity. And you're not taxed on it. Many times people don't know about this. They get their RMD, they pay tax on it, then they give it to the church or organization. And so it's but if you gave it directly to the organization, there would be no tax, and that's called a qualified charitable donation. And we have a paper that talks about that we'd love to put in your hands, how to give and receive with charitable contributions. So call 800-725-7616 if you'd like that commissioned report to be able to understand how to give and receive charitable contributions in a way that you can save money on those. Daniel, that's a beautiful way. We see that often with people. And the key, it's not for somebody to do on their own at home, because it's got to come from the account and be done in the proper fashion to make sure that the RMD is being satisfied, or at least that it's going toward that. And then their tax person has to understand that what's going on as well at the same time, right?
Yeah, I think that is one of the biggest, coolest things that you can do that a lot of people don't know about. And it's not that hard to set up, and a lot of people have causes they care about. There's so many good things, food pantries, right? Your church, all these kinds of things. Our world is in desperate need of help in all these different areas, and a lot of people that we work with have extra money.
Yeah,
they have extra income. Their stuff set up and it's producing income, and they want to give back. They feel blessed and they want to give back. And this is a really neat way where you could take it out and you can do up to $100,000 a year. And it doesn't show up on your tax line. It doesn't even show up. You don't have to worry about deductions or anything like that. When you do it properly, it just doesn't show up on your taxes at all.
Right, right, and it's a beautiful thing to be able to help you save some money and be able to help others at the same time. It's kind of a no brainer. If you're giving, if you're a tither and giving to the church or whatever the case may be, or to thousands of dollars a year, well, then it's a no brainer. And if you're 70 and a half or older, you can do this, and it will just go directly, and it will save you. It will save you some significant tax money, potentially 20% or more, depending on what your bracket is.
That goes back to managing those accounts, like we talked about earlier, because if you want to do that, you shouldn't be taking money out of, call it, your non-qualified accounts, right? And your bank account and giving it to the church or the charitable organization that you care about. If you have an RMD, because you can take that money out tax-free out of your qualified account, make that count towards your RMD, and then spend your money in your other accounts for the things that you can't get deductions for. Yeah,
exactly. So, it's not necessarily rocket science, but it's something that you need to pay attention to. And don't try this at home. We at Adjemi Financial Strategies are able to understand some of these tax aspects. That's why we started Connecticut Sound Tax Group, to be able to help people prepare, particularly people in and close to retirement, to be able to pay as little taxes as possible and save them some money on tax preparation from that standpoint. But that's very important when we're talking about those things. We're going to get into some other things after we come back from break here. Qualified annuities and legacy planning and whatnot. But I hope that you stick around. We have this book that we'd like to put in your hand called Tax Invisible, that tells you how to be able to invest your money in a way that is invisible to the IRS for tax purposes, and you can still receive it and have liquidity, be able to use it for your purposes. You can have that by calling 800-725-7616. We're talking today about taxation on RMDs, required minimum distributions. We'll be right back after this.
I'm David Scranton, founder of the Retirement Income Store. If you're in or near retirement, are you certain you have the right retirement plan in place? Do you want to help ensure your nest egg will last you all throughout retirement? Take our retirement review quiz and find out in 5 minutes or less if you're doing everything you can to achieve a more successful retirement.
Visit us online at Adjemi.com. That's AGEMY.com. Welcome back to Financial Strategies with Andrew Adjemi in Connecticut and Daniel Adjemi in Colorado.
Nancy and I were planning her required minimum distribution, and she was saying, Andrew, what can I do with this? I mean, I don't need this money. I have enough money between my pension and Social Security to live, and I don't want this money. Don't need this money. What should I be doing with it? I said, well, Nancy, you could take this. You could go on trips with it. You could give it to your grandkids. If you want, if you don't want to do any of that, we could put this into an account that, for every dollar you put in, it will be bumped up, like maybe $1.50 tax-free to your heirs upon your death. Because, the three things in life are certain, right? Death, taxes, and change. And so with that, that's an option that you can do with this money once you pay the tax on your required minimum distribution. She said, Andrew, I love that. Let's do it. I'm Andrew Adjemi.
And I'm Daniel Adjemi, and you're listening to Financial Strategies. Today, we're talking about taxation on your required minimum distributions. And that's a good story because it's not so bad. Some people get all, I got to take money out of my accounts, but it's not so bad if you're set up properly inside the account so that you're just spending your interest. It's not so bad. If you don't have to pay a ton of taxes, you're spending interest. Do something fun. Go on a trip. Help your kids start a business, pay for your grandkids' college education, or set up an inheritance, set up a plan for the future to give to the people you care about, right? Yeah. So there's some neat things that you could do with these required minimum distributions when you're not spending down your principal. That's a big part about it. So What is that kind of account that you set up?
Well, that's an amazing thing, and it's called life insurance. And, I wanted to differentiate here between death insurance and life insurance. A lot of us baby boomers call death insurance life insurance, and it's term insurance that will be for only a certain term of time and probably will go away before you die. But we're talking about real life insurance that's for your life. That's why they call it life insurance originally, something that would be for your life and usable during your life. And in Nancy's case, if she needs nursing home care, she's going to be able to use some of this money toward that. She can use it for her lifetime to spend it on a tax-free nature. But in the worst case, when she dies, it's going to be bumped up and it's going to be tax-free to her heirs from that same way. So she likes that. And, sometimes we use traditional, sometimes we use stuff that what I like to call a Roth lookalike on steroids. It's not your father's, so to speak, life insurance, which you know all about that, Daniel. You have that stuff yourself, and your nephews and nieces and brothers and sisters and all that kind of stuff. But this is something that when you're taking the money out, you pay the tax on the required minimum distribution. Then what do you do with it? Well, there's a variety of you can reinvest it, but you may very well pay taxes on the growth in reinvesting it. If you use life insurance and plan for your legacy, it can pass on a tax-free basis and not pay taxes while it grows.
Well, everyone has to have safe, liquid money, right? You have to, and most people keep it in the bank. and the problem with that is one, if you're over the $250,000 FDIC insured limit, you're in big problems because banks are way over leveraged, right? And the FDIC insurance is a whole nother story. But if Chase Bank went bad, okay, it would wipe out the entire fund,
right?
The entire FDIC insurance fund. So what about all the other banks in the world, right? So
Daniel, let me just say, in the past 31 years, FDIC has almost gone bankrupt twice. And, I agree with you. If we have another time like we did in 2008, they probably will go bankrupt. So I agree. It's not. And then who they go to? They go to the government, who was already bankrupt to be able to bail them out. So I'm with you.
So then if they print money to bail out the banks, then it's still stealing from you because you're either going to pay it in taxes or it's going to devalue the money you have in the bank. So you don't have the same purchasing power. So why not put your safe money in an actual safe account like you're talking about there? That's actually earning you some tax-free interest and give a benefit to your loved ones or people you care about at a tax-free rate. So that is definitely a neat thing for people who have extra money that they don't need from their requirement distributions.
Right. And another thing people don't often realize is that during the Great Depression, that there was not any money available from Wall Street for the most part. There was not any money available in banks. Where money was available was in life insurance companies and life insurance. And so that was one of the things that brought many people through the Great Depression in a better fashion than what most people had gone through. So, that's an option. It's there, a lot of people out there say, "Oh, I don't like life insurance." Well, that's fine. You don't have to have it. And we're just trying to give you all the options so that you can make smart decisions. And that's what we're about on Financial Strategies with Andrew Daly Alchemy, is that people don't know what people don't know. Today's topic is taxation on RMDs. And if you would like, we have a paper that we'd like to put in your hand that we think would be useful, beneficial to you in how to give and receive charitable contributions. So if you're a charitable minded person, I think this paper will be very beneficial, and you can have that for free by calling 800-725-7616. Daniel, another thing, as we're have a few minutes left in the show, that people can take part in with their IRAs and planning for required minimum distributions. And again, let me just say to you and our listening audience, if you're 60 years old, it's time to start thinking about required minimum distributions, in my mind, because you can plan for those and put yourself in a better position to pay less taxes at that time than you will if you don't do any planning. Obviously, planning is a better way to be be prepared for the future. You're going to make a decision by decision or a decision by indecision. I'd rather make it by decision. So let's talk about qualified longevity annuities, Daniel, and how they work.
Yeah, the QLAC, right, it's kind of a niche product. And I've had quite a few people call me and ask me about these things. And it doesn't work for everybody, but you may be one of the people that it works really well for. And what it allows you to do is put a portion of your money into one of these insured products, and you don't have to take required minimum distributions on that money. You can put off taking any money out of these accounts until you're 85 years old, at which time you have to turn it on, and then you get a stream of income. So it really, really depends on your situation and your income needs and things like that. But these could work very nicely for the right people.
Right. You can put up to $135,000 or 25% of your qualified monies into those, whichever the lesser is. You could start taking this income like a pension prior to age 85 if you want. If you want to take it at 79 and then set one up for 80 years old and then set one up for 81, whatever. However, there's some variety of ways. Doesn't work for a lot of people, but for some people it may work, and that maybe that's you. But our job is to give you the information, education that you need to be able to make smart decisions. And today we're just trying to give you some of the 30,000 foot view of how to be able to plan for and prepare for taxation on your RMDs. So that could sit off and push off that taxation on that $135,000 for a period of time that might allow different things to change in your life. And one of the things that people are unclear about is how Medicare is affected, for instance, by if you have a large amount of money coming in. If you're single and currently it's over $85,000 a year, your Medicare payment is going to increase from that standpoint. So even though it's not considered a tax, it is another payment that you have to pay out if you take out too much. So if your RMDs are pushing you over the limit, well, you could be paying more Medicare insurance, and that's called IRMA from that standpoint, is the acronym for that. But these qualified longevity annuities are one of those things that might be able to defer payments for a while to be able to get you to another point in time.
Yeah, and maybe it's about the strategies that you're using for all these things. They can all work really nicely together, but maybe it's something like somebody put that 135 off, and they don't have to take any RMDs off that. It keeps them under that IRMA limit that you're talking about, right, and allows them to start doing Roth conversions for a few years and take all their other money and get it moved over, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And keep them under that threshold, or there's a threshold with Social Security you got to watch out for as well.
Exactly.
So it depends how you use these things together to help you save that money on taxes, and to help you. It's all about having the confidence that you need in retirement and not running out of money, right? So having the confidence that you have the income stream. Now you don't have a job, you're not working, you're not getting paid from your employer. So you need new sources of income as opposed to selling assets, because you cannot depend upon assets going up. You can hope assets go up, but hope is not a retirement plan. And so just like you wouldn't hope you'll figure out how to make it to California if you need to get there in a time frame.
Right.
You get a map or you get a GPS to get to California, right?
Right.
That's the same with your retirement. You can't hope you're going to make it. You have to set yourself up so that you know what you can expect in income, so you can keep that lifestyle that you want to have.
Thank you, Daniel. That's where the strategies that you use are so important. More importantly than the products, than the investment vehicles that you use, are the strategies and how you use those things and how you get the most bang for your buck, not just in your investments, but in the taxation, and pay as little bit of taxes as possible. Well, you've been listening to Financial Strategies with Andrew and Daniel Adjemi. Today's topic has been taxation on RMDs, required minimum distributions. We're glad that you joined us. We have a parting gift for you today called The Tax Invisible. This is a short read book. It's only about 80 pages, easy, and how to be able to get tax-free money and have money available to you that's safe, secure, and tax-free. You can have that by calling 800-725-7616. And we look forward to talking with you next time. Until then, you too can have a stress-free retirement.